All right, welcome everyone to today's Google Webmaster Central Office Hours Hangouts. Today we're going to be focusing on app indexing, and we have two special guests here, Maria and Christoph, who are going to be answering most of the questions, giving a brief overview of what app indexing is, how it works, some of the common problems that we've run into, or rather the questions that people have submitted to us in the past. And we hope it'll be interesting and insightful for everyone who has an Android app and is considering app indexing, or who's already implementing app indexing and maybe has some specific questions about it. All right. With that, I'll hand it over to you, Christoph, for the presentation.
Yep, thanks, John. So let's look at the slides.
All right. Here we go.
Hi, hello everyone. Let's start. So I want to keep this interactive. So please jump in if you have any questions live. And I want to start with asking you actually, how many applications do you have installed on your mobile phone? Would you reveal the secret to us? Come on, don't be shy.
Not everybody has a
mobile phone.
A good quality microphone. So sometimes people just post in the chat.
Okay. Okay, doesn't matter. So we can reveal you the data. So we were actually measuring the data, and we're looking how many applications users install. If we go to the next slide, we see that in the US, users has an average of 33 applications, but they only engage with roughly 1/3 of them. So we were thinking in Google how we can tackle this problem, and we were thinking what we can do to increase the re-engagement of users, and how to drive more traffic back to the users. And we came up with this exciting idea of app indexing, and we're going to tell you a little bit about it today, and then we're going to deep dive into the questions around it. So if you go further, I wanted to tell you a little bit about the importance of app indexing. First of all, it's good to have a look at app indexing because it's driving new downloads and re-engaging existing users to your app. Second of all, maybe you've already heard about it, we announced that now on tap will be based on app indexing. So it's a really exciting feature. Have a look at the last videos from Google I/O to see more about it. And we're going to launch app indexing on iOS soon, and we have a available for everyone to integrate, as well as we will launch an app-only solution where applications that don't have a corresponding website will be also available to integrate with app indexing. Further, we released in one of our blog posts that app indexing is one of the signal in the ranking. So this is also a very important business aspect why you should look into it. Okay, just very briefly, the four steps that you have to do in order to integrate your application with app indexing. First of all, you have to support deep linking in your app, and we also encourage you very much to do at the same time the integration with app indexing API. Second of all, you have to annotate your websites with the deep link. So you have to tell to us that this particular website is matching with one of the deep links inside of your application. The third step is verifying your application with your website. So basically connecting your website with one of your apps, and you can do that over the Google Play Developer Console. And at the end, when you launch the application, you upload your new version of the app to Google Play. You can start monitoring the app indexing progress in Webmaster Tools in Search Console.
Search Console, yes, of course.
I think it would be good if you can refresh, John, because we have a couple of...
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh.
Yeah. Magic.
Magic. The slides are fixed.
Yeah. Cool.
Okay.
So just let's have a deep dive into the deep link, because we've seen that this a lot of times needs a little bit more explanation. So the anatomy of a deep link is that we have provided a custom-made protocol in case on the Android application is an Android-app. We also have already an iOS protocol, which will be an iOS app. And afterwards, it comes the package ID in case of an Android application. In case of an iOS application, that would be the iTunes ID of the application. And then we can provide the scheme. And here we can use either a HTTP scheme or we can use a custom scheme. Both of the approaches are fine. The slight difference is that if you start using the HTTP scheme, we're going to start automatically to detect all of the URLs that are indexed by Google already, and we're going to start to validate them automatically. But if you choose the custom scheme, then we're going to wait for you to annotate the pages with the deep link annotations, and we are going to only start validating the web pages which are annotated with the deep links. And at the end, we have the host path and then the path itself that comes along. So those are the typical issues that most of our partners have when they integrate with app indexing. One of them is first click free. So we require from our partners to provide a first click free experience, meaning that if you click a deep link from Google search results, it will open the content of your app directly. So the users won't see any commercials, any pop-up windows asking or informing you about the latest and greatest in your new release of the app. So please be aware of that and make sure that that is not happening. Then the second typical problem is with the Robots Txt. So as we are validating actually if the content of your application is the same as the content of your website, you have to make sure that all of the backend APIs that you use in your application in order to fetch the content in your app, they have to be unlocked for our crawlers. Otherwise, we won't be able to verify if the content that you display in your app is the same as the content on your website. The third typical problem is the native ARM code. So we actually encourage all of our partners to make applications in a way that they work on both of the environments, so not only ARM but also x86 environment. So please make sure that for the activities that that are using deep linking and that you would like to display in Google search, that they don't use any native ARM code. Other typical issues are the incorrect deep link format, and the easiest way to tackle this problem is to look at our QR tool, which is on our public documentation. You can check all of your deep link there. It will generate a QR code, and then you can open this QR code inside of your app and see if everything is working fine. Different behavior on real devices. So we have problems like sometimes some of the application, for example, they require a GPS signal to start, and they display an error if they don't get a GPS signal. That's one of the typical problems. So please make sure that even though if for example, your app would like to have a GPS signal, that it can still display some custom or default content if there is none. And that last but not least is the content validation issue. So like I mentioned before, we have the so-called validation process in place where we verify that the content of your application is the same as the content of your website. So please make sure that that is actually the case. And obviously, we know that in mobile applications, because to the screen size of mobile devices, sometimes you prefer to show less content than on a website itself, and that's fine. The content does not have to be one-to-one match, but still, the more same content we have, the easier it is to pass through the validation process.
Right. So we've tried to provide some tools to help you solve this yourself, because we do realize that you need to be able to understand how you're doing and monitor for any errors, as well as see what kind of benefits you're actually getting from this. So we worked quite hard with a bunch of different engineering teams to launch a few features inside Search Console that will help you monitor what's going on with your indexed app content. And you can add your app to Search Console just like you would do with any website. You are going to need to be registered as an owner of your account in Google Play in order for you to be able to do that. If you are not registered in Google Play, whoever is can add their app and then add you. So it depends on your team who needs to monitor which stats. We know that this is different for different companies, but in either case, Search Console is the place for you to be able to see impressions, clicks, and errors. So let's have a look at what you have inside there with some examples. The first thing is errors. So as we're indexing content from your app, we're going to see that maybe some of your pages don't match the content of your website, and we'll give you examples of those. So you can keep track in the graph of the overall trend. So we show you data for 90 days. Or you can just look at the specific examples, and we show you about 1,000 examples. One thing we've heard a lot is that people are usually asking for more than 1,000 examples, but what you can do here is actually try to look for patterns. So very frequently what happens is that a specific folder or a specific resource is missing, and so all the pages from a specific pattern in your app have the same problem. So if you identify those patterns, then you can just fix all of those errors in one go. We provide you specific examples there at the bottom where it says App URI, so you can click on one of those, and then what you'll see are different steps on how to fix it. There's links for you to open the web page, links to open the app page, and then there's this magical step number 3, which is fix content mismatch. And this can have many different aspects to it, so we haven't really try to summarize all of them in this short direction screen, but we saw that there's a bunch of questions already submitted for content mismatch, so hopefully we'll be able to dive into this a little bit more during the rest of the Hangout. But what you have here is you have the app URI, you have the corresponding web URL, and then we also have provided for you a way to compare the two of them. So on the next slide, you'll see that if you click on Open App Page, then we give you the ADB command, which you can use if you have a connected device, Android device, to open that specific page. Or you can just use the QR code to scan and then open that page. So you can compare that with the web page and see, but what's even more useful is the Fetch as Google tool, which we recently launched. So this allows you to see your app page the way that Googlebot would see it. So on the next slide, we show you the result of a fetch like this. So this was a partial fetch, which means that not all of the content that we needed was there. And we show you examples in the bottom of stuff that was blocked. And sometimes this might be critical, sometimes this might not be critical, but we anyway will show you those examples so you can have a look. We also show you the rendered version of the page in the phone image to the right. And you can compare that with whatever is on your website. So then you could try to see what the issue is. And there are many different reasons why there could be a content mismatch. So hopefully we'll try to cover some of them over the course of the Hangout. But a few of those, first, that because of specific resources that are blocked, your app might be reacting differently to the crawler than it is to a regular user. Or it could be that, and this is on our end mostly, that we crawled your web page at a different time than your app page. And so even though you updated one or the other, we still haven't seen that. So if you need help on this, feel free to come to our forum. We have a special section on app indexing, or you can post questions here while we're having the Hangout, either in the chat or in the Q&A, and we'll try to take care of that. One thing to keep in mind is that every case is different, so it's always good to give examples. If you just say, oh, I'm having a problem with content mismatch, all we can tell you is a fairly general advice, which will likely not be super helpful. So it's always good to say, I looked at this app URI compared to this web URL on this date, and I saw this result, what's going on? And then we're in a much better position to give you advice. So I think that's about it. One thing that we're missing a screenshot here of is the actual clicks and impressions. So in addition to all the errors and the troubleshooting and the debugging, you can actually see who's finding your app in search results and who is clicking on it. So you can see how much traffic you're actually getting. So that's also really interesting. And depending on how your team is structured, it could be actually different people that are looking at that report versus the people who are looking at the error report. So hopefully we'll cover a little bit of this, because I know we got some questions related to that. But those are some of the resources that we have for people who are interested in app indexing and are having trouble with specific issues. And again, like I mentioned, if your question is not covered in any of those resources, feel free to come by the forum and ask us, and we'll try our best to help you.
All right. That sounds pretty good. So we have a bunch of questions that were submitted already, but if any of the people directly in the Hangout have a question about this presentation, feel free to jump on in and ask now.
I'll ask a basic question, if you don't mind, John.
Sure, go for it.
Well, we're looking at developing an app, so this is all new to us, whereas normal SEO and indexing I'm quite comfortable with. So when you're talking about indexing an app, is that only within the Play Store? I mean, you're talking about each of the URLs or the pages within the app, but if you don't download the app, can you even see those? I mean, do you have some real basics for us to try and understand exactly what people are seeing and where? And I assume people have to download the app before even seeing any of it. So indexing separate parts of the app seems a little bit strange to me. So maybe you can talk about the basics of the architecture and where you see it and what you actually view when you look at a page, if there even is such a thing in an app.
That's a really cool question. Thank you for the question. So first, let me just ask you about the app that you're thinking of building. Is it going to be public content, so anyone will be able to see it? Or
yeah,
okay.
Yes. Yeah, it's not going to be paid, and it wouldn't be behind a paid screen or anything.
Yeah, so you can determine what parts of your app are indexed. When we talk about more like a website, right? That's why we ask you to add app URIs, links that Christoph was showing earlier, and you basically assign this address to a piece of content. But actually, we just recently introduced
We only sell the one experience, so we only have one
API. And you don't even need to let us access your app content in order to crawl it and render it like we would do with a web page. You could just send us through the app indexing API the description and the title of each page. And then we would use that to compare it to the corresponding web page and create an indexed version of that app page. So I'm hoping that this kind of answers your question. Like, we don't download your app per se. You open it up for us by adding some functionality into the app itself, so that we are able to access the content, and then kind of the process from there follows pretty much the same way as it would for a website. Does that make sense?
Okay, I think I muted you between because of.
You're going to have to unmute yourself. We can't unmute.
Yeah, sorry, I did mute myself. So it did make sense. But if someone's searching within the App Store or just on Google Mobile, presumably app pages don't appear in Google Mobile, but only searching within an App Store, or am I wrong?
No, they would appear in the normal search results. So
Oh, they would, okay.
And you're searching for something that would match the app that you have installed, or that where we think this app would be useful, then we would show a direct link to the app for people searching on the smartphone.
Is that currently heavily reliant on people searching and using the word app within their search, or you do your best to match it anyway?
Normal content. So if, I don't know, for example, I have the Wikipedia app installed. If I search for a word fish, then it'll show me a link to the Wikipedia app, just like it would show me a link to the Wikipedia page if I didn't have the app installed.
Okay.
To extend this part a bit further, is that you don't need to install the app to see the results already. So we're experimenting right now with showing suggestions, so that you can actually, if you look for a content, like in the case of Wikipedia, you look for some famous person and you don't have the Wikipedia app installed, it will actually suggest if there is a good entry in Wikipedia that could display the results for your query, then we will suggest to you downloading this app.
Okay. Thanks.
There's two types of app results that we show right now, and that I can see how that can be a little confusing. There's content of apps, which is what Christoph was just talking about, and this is for indexed apps. When we see that the content that we've already found in the app matches, we offer the person to install it. And then there's another type where we just show the app itself based on the app from the Play Store, but we don't know what's inside the app. And I guess the easiest way to distinguish between them right now, because we constantly change the UI, is the color of the button. So for the ones where they're indexed, the color of the button is green. And I'm going to post in the chat, or John will post in the chat, a link to the blog post so you can see a screenshot. And for the other ones where we're just pulling them from the Play Store without really knowing what's the content inside, the button is white. But in either case, what happens from there is that it gets installed if the user decides so.
And although you can't really talk about ranking signals at all, is it always best practice to have almost everything open, indexable? First view, obviously, on every page, indexable, but can you preclude lots of visitors if you don't, basically? Would you be more likely to show something that people can actually see versus something people can't?
I mean, obviously, we're interested in looking at the public content. So the more content you have, and the better the content is, the quality of the content better, then the more likely you will see your results in Google search, right? But
I guess the important part is it's not like a silver bullet that will make your site go.
I know the feeling.
It does help us show content that matches what the user is looking for, and that can help us with the ranking a bit, but it's not that your site is going to magically jump up to #1 just because you ranked it under the top others. All right, let's run through some of the questions that was submitted. Should we go through this order or the other? Okay. All right. I'd like to have more information when content mismatch error occurs. We run multiple A/B tests on our website, and we don't know what exactly caused content mismatch.
So the best way to do this really is with examples. This is very tricky to say where the problem is. Is it on our end that something timed out, or on your end that some setting in the app, or just like scrolling, scheduling issues. So if you provide specific examples, we will check when things were crawled and rendered, and we will be able to help you. In general, most of the time it's due to blocked resources, so we can't access specific resources that are required for rendering that app page. And then we decide that it's not similar enough to the other page. But again, we will need to see examples in order to help you.
Also, which pops into my mind is that you can actually exclude the part of the websites that when you run some A/B tests on your website, you can create a no indexed XML file and say to us that we don't want those websites to be indexed by Google. So then you kind of
those app pages.
Yeah, exactly.
App pages, yeah. All right. Should we include app peep links on both mobile and desktop versions of our website, or just one? Which one?
So here I would say make sure that the connection between your mobile version and your desktop version is very clear to us. And a very easy way to do this is by using raw alternate. So you will make sure that we know this is my desktop version and this is my mobile version. And if that is clear to us, then we'll take care of the rest. But I would say it's usually better to put them on the desktop version of the site. But ultimately up to you, as long as it's clear to us the connection between the two versions.
All right. I'm trying to set up deep links to launch my app from multiple Google versions. Some of the deep links do work, but I keep getting the intent URI not supported in Search Console. Even for the links that do launch the app, what could be the reason?
I'm not sure what it means by multiple Google versions. So maybe if you're here, Yanis, if you could clarify in the chat a little bit what you mean, then we would be able to get deeper into that question. But usually the most common reason for the intent URI not supported is we've seen improperly marked spaces in app URI, so people just leave a blank space, whereas in reality, you have to replace the spaces with a plus sign. So that's the most common thing that we've seen, but I don't know if that's your case. Like if you would give examples, then we.
Okay, I think we do have that. Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yes.
I can hear you. Great.
Okay, so I think we do have that version in the manifest as well. But I was wondering, when I click on the error on the Search Console on the intent URI not supported, I can see the 3 recommendations for fixing that issue, and then below there are some data. And I wanted to ask you, so I can see the source, I can see the app URI, the date the app has been crawled, the language, the APK version, and then the very last set is the web URL. And my question is, where is that web URL being pulled from?
So presumably you have put markup on your web pages to associate it with a specific app page, and that's where we would be getting that from.
Okay, so this is where they call it from. But the thing is that it's totally different to the URL that I have included in the homepage. So I'm really wondering what could be the issue. It has nothing to do with it. It's another domain, actually.
Interesting. It could have something to do with canonicalization. Maybe if you just send us the examples, then we'll have a look and see exactly what's going on there. Another thing that comes to my mind is that maybe it was like this before. Then there were some changes made on your end, but we haven't yet recalled it to see the updated markup. So that could be another reason. We do have some mismatches between call scheduling for the app and for the website, so that could be an issue there as well.
That's something. Thank you.
You could send us the examples. We'll definitely look at this because it sounds like a really interesting.
Great, thank you very much. Can I ask one more question, please?
Go for it.
Okay, so regarding app indexing, we have, let's say that we have a website, we want to search for hotels, flights, or train tickets, whatever. So we have a web version of an A to B flights page, but in our app, we're using a search form to create results for this A to B query. My question is, can we use a search function that shows like live results instead of a web page in the actual app, or do we have to create app pages that correspond to those specific search queries? Does that make sense?
So would you have a URI that would correspond? Like, I know, for example, in Skyscanner, they have, like in the URL, they have the parameters that the search was made with, and that is the page. Like, basically, we need some kind of address to be able to access that content. And if you have that, then I think
we do have this URI, and we can generate a URI like that, but it's dynamic, which means that it might change.
Yeah, so what's going to happen there, I predict, is based on the mismatches in call time. We'll probably throw a content mismatch error for you because the results are changing. But again, this would be an interesting example for us to see, for the engineering team to see, because for this type of content, freshness is really important. Like, we need to be showing the latest stuff. So if you send us some examples, this would be great feedback for our engineering team.
Great, will do. Thank you very much.
All right. What's the correlation between ASO and app indexing? How does app indexing work on app ranking?
Okay. So we are talking here about App Store optimization, in case anybody doesn't know what ASO stands for in this context. And I think App Store optimization has been something that people have been doing for a while. The important difference to understand here, and that kind of goes back to the different app results that we show that I was talking about earlier, is that App Store only shows you the description of the app, reviews from people, some screenshots, and so forth. So it's not really what is inside the app. What app indexing is that it. So we are talking here about App Store optimization. Everybody doesn't know what this is. Okay. So in the interest of sound quality, it would be great if you could mute your microphone until you want to ask a question. Yeah. Okay. So back to the question. So app indexing shows you and ranks what's inside the app, whereas the App Store shows you only the description, kind of what's the outside of the app. So you need to take care of both in order to make sure that you have the best chance to be presented in the App Store and in the search results, right? So for App Store, what's important is for you to have a really great description so people are clear what your app is about. If you have a lot of happy customers and they left a review there and the rating is great, then that's helpful too for other people to see it. And then have informative screenshots so that people can see, okay, what is this that I'm about to download? Is it worth it? For app indexing, on the other hand, you really need to make sure that inside your app you have high-quality, relevant content that we would want to show to people in the search results. And you also want to make sure that you don't have any technical errors that we've been discussing for the most part here. Because if there's an error, then we won't show that result with an app link, and then people won't have the chance to discover your app from the search results. So they're both related to your app, but one relates to the inside content of your app, and the other one relates to the description of your app in the App Store. I hope that made sense. I don't know if whoever asked that question is around. Maybe they can clarify if they had more details that they wanted to know. Or
It's from Maria.
Okay, I asked this question.
No.
I just wanted to answer it.
Okay. We have only an app. What are the factors to rank app only? Do we have a chance to rank better than websites, which contain all the 3 platforms, or
I can take
do
this
you have a
one.
chance? Yeah.
So for those that maybe haven't seen that, we announced in latest Google I/O that we're gonna start also crawling the apps that don't have a corresponding website. So actually, we're really excited about this project because it's for the first time we're gonna allow users access to content of applications which previously were not accessible for them. So this is like a direct fulfillment of Google's mission. And we're working very hardly to launch a couple of partners right now. I think in the US we already have one which is launched. It's Hotels Tonight. And I think from a developer's perspective, you just have to make sure that the content inside of your application has good quality, and that you serve good results to the users, and that you integrate your application with app indexing. All of the rest is taken care from our side. And we are not allowed to reveal any information related to the ranking itself. So I don't know if that answers Chandon's question, but if you're here, we can elaborate more on that.
All right. We're seeing back button errors in Search Console. Interesting. This error is not reported consistently. We see it one day and then it goes away. Nothing changed in the published app. Should we ignore the error?
No, send us examples. We love examples. If you see this and you saw it one day and not the other, then tell us, and then we'll see what this is about, because this might be something that we need to improve on our end. So we would love if you could talk to us and send us examples.
How do you check how much has been indexed already?
Good question.
Much.
We currently don't really have any feature similar to index status. So I don't know if you are familiar with the rest of the features of Search Console, but we have something called index status, which shows you how many pages we've seen from your site and how many of those have been crawled and how many of them have been indexed and so forth. So you kind of get an idea of what's going on. But for apps, we don't have a corresponding feature. I guess you could look at least at the ones which are being shown in Search Analytics. So if they're already appearing in search results, then they're definitely indexed. But it's good feedback that we should provide a similar feature for apps as well, so you should be able to see what's been indexed. So thanks for that.
Can I follow up to that? So there's no external way to do it via Google with a site operator such as all in URL or site colon or anything like that for apps specifically if you use a combo of operators to try and pull?
Not yet.
I mean, on your own, you can build your statistics on your own in your app and then calculate it on your own. That's perfectly fine, right?
Yeah, but I think he'd like to double check someone else's app maybe to see how a competitor is doing with regards
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Which is useful info to see if you know a competitor or another app has, just from your own browsing, has 1,000 pages or 1,000 things on there. It'd be nice to know if 10 of those are indexed or all 1,000. And not that you should follow competitors necessarily, but it's still good to be able to check.
Always good to be aware. Yeah, we know this. We're thinking about this, but we don't have anything to.
Thanks.
For some of the companies, we are publishing on the public documentation case studies where we reveal this data. So you can look up this page. Maybe that will help you.
All right. What are the plans for iOS 9?
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Okay. What are your plans for iOS 9? Someone really wants to know.
Yeah.
Okay. Google's heavily promoting app indexing, but don't you think you're moving your audience from search to app? If we implement app indexing, then chances are users engage more with apps and less with search engines and websites.
That is a very philosophical question. So we primarily care for showing the most relevant content to users. We don't really care if that's in an app or in a search result, like a knowledge panel, or if it's on a website. We just want them to keep finding what they look for so that they can keep searching and keep their trust in us. Most people, at least from the ones that I've talked to, don't really distinguish between apps and websites. They just want to get done whatever task they're trying to accomplish. And so we try to align ourselves on that model too, and that's why app indexing came into being. And then there's a whole separate question of why are there apps and why are there websites and what should go into apps and what should go into websites, and we could probably have 3 more Hangouts to discuss this, but I think it's on case-by-case basis, and what we found so far, at least based on the apps that we've looked at, is that apps usually work really well for loyal customers who are coming back. You know, they've installed your app, so they really like what you're doing. They want you on their phone, and they want to refer to you again and again. So for kind of the top part of the funnel where people are just discovering you, maybe having that type of content in your app is not so good because the threshold for them to overcome in order to be able to use your app is quite high, and they might not do this if they are not familiar with you. But for loyal users, kind of more advanced functionality, or I don't know, like things that are available through subscription or by having an account, this kind of stuff is we found a lot more successful in apps. Like if you look at the case studies that Christoph mentioned, people tend to spend more time browsing different things in an app, or a conversion tends to increase because they keep buying stuff, like you can push notifications to them for discounts and so forth. So it really is a case-by-case decision, and we're not looking to only have all of our users on the web or direct everyone to apps. We want to make sure that whatever they're looking for, they find it, and that they keep us as a reference of, okay, this is the place where I go when I look for stuff.
Content mismatch errors, back to technical stuff. There's a huge time gap between app and website crawl dates. How can we deal with that?
Send us examples.
Okay. Does this also work in iOS if you have Chrome installed or only on Android?
So the feature or
app indexing.
Okay, so I can take one. So to iOS, we already launched in EMEA around 7 partners, and the documentation is published on our website, how to integrate your application with app indexing. It's actually very similar to the integration that we have with Android devices. The thing is that someone already asked before, there is a new deep linking strategy in iOS 9, and so there will be some changes, but generally we will support app indexing on iOS. So if you're interested in launching iOS on, then stay tuned, and we're gonna inform you in the upcoming months more about it.
We've used app indexing in landing pages for different websites, but we're getting different results for different websites. Some are using app indexing, some are not.
Okay. Yeah, I think this is another one of those where we would really have to see the examples in order to be able to help. So I don't. It could be that specific app links are not showing because there's errors, like content mismatch or back button or something like this. It could be that we haven't recrawled all of the stuff, depending on how quickly we are recrawling your content to find the markup. There could be many things. So if you send us some examples, we would love to look at them.
So please make sure to look at the slide that was on our presentation about the typical issues. So that could be also the case of one of the Robots Txt, for example, that you're blocking one of your backend APIs and the application cannot fetch the content for this activity. And also, I think in the Search Console there is now a tool called Fetch as Google, so you can actually also see how your website is displayed and how your deep link is displayed and how we see it.
All right, I think this is general search question. Why is my website not caching in Google? Please don't suggest I use Webmaster Tools. I recommend posting this question again in one of the general Webmaster Office Hours Hangouts. So later today there's one, on Friday there's another one. We do them every 2 weeks. So maybe repost that question with a little bit more detail there, or definitely go to the help forums and get help from other people who have run into similar problems already. Does app indexing only work if that app is installed on the mobile phone?
So I can take one because I answered it before. Actually, we are experimenting right now, and we are displaying within Google search results also results which are, so when you don't download the application and you ask some particular query and we think that this results for this query can be found in one of the application, we suggest to users downloading a particular app. So yeah, the basic question is no, you don't have to have app installed in order to see the benefits of app indexing, and as well the information that we released in April this year that app indexing is one of the signals for ranking. It also applies for the users that didn't install the app.
All right.
Yeah, and we just put in the chat a link to the blog post where we announced this feature that Christoph just described, so you can have a look there.
And we'll copy that to the event comments as well, so that if you're not live in the Hangout, you'll have that information too. Every time you use Fetch as Google for APK, it results in Google internal error. It's been like this every day for the past 2 weeks. What should we do?
Right, so there are a few different reasons why we show these internal errors. It could be that it's a problem on our end or a problem with the specific application. If the application has some blocked resources and that causes it to react differently to the crawler, we could throw this error. In general, I would recommend, again, escalating it to us so that we could have a look in our internal tools to see exactly what was the issue. A lot of the stuff that we've seen is applications declaring that they support a specific activity, but then they don't actually launch it. Other things that we've seen is timing out for longer than 45 seconds, so then we just can't render that page. So there could be many reasons why we show this error, and we are very well aware of the fact that it covers a lot of different cases, and it could be a lot more informative. So we're looking into ways to break it down into more specific and more informative errors. So when you send us this feedback, this really helps us. So please send us an examples. Like if you just send them on Google+, or if you post in the forum, we'll keep track of those.
To establish relationship between app and web page, Google recommends adding a link to the head section. Due to constraints, we've added it to the body instead. Is there a downside to adding link elements to the body?
I haven't heard of cases like this so far, so actually I would be very interested to see how this worked. I'm assuming that the engineers would also be very interested in seeing this.
I mean, as a general rule,
So-
we recommend putting it into
Yeah.
into the head section. So that sounds like a
Yeah. It's so in general for web search indexing, we really need link elements and meta tags and all of that to be within the head section so that we can clearly recognize this is not a part of the body, or this isn't anything that could be user-generated content, for example. So that's essentially why we really need that information in the head. And if that's working at the moment, I'd see that more as a bug on our side rather than a feature. So maybe it's working for you at the moment, but I think this is something that we should probably fix on our side so that we don't pick up these kind of link elements that aren't in the head. Will app indexing help webmasters to increase traffic to their site or just to apps?
Well,
because of the ranking, because app indexing is actually now one of the signals in the ranking. So I would say yes, it helps as well to.
Oh, you are technically sending people to your app. So if the app result shows, then people are clicking to go through to the app. So if you do want more traffic to your website, then sending people to your app probably is counterproductive. I guess this is more a question of what is your app for, what is your site for, and who do you want to go where. But there is a small boost that you might get, but as we have a lot of ranking factors, I wouldn't rely on this to kind of skyrocket you up in the search results page alone. You still need to have a good high-quality website for us to show it high up in the search results. And then in the end, if people click on the app link, they will end up in your app. So I guess look at the search queries in Search Analytics for your app and for your site. See where content from your app ranks and where content from your site ranks, and see the CTR for specific queries, and then think about your business goals and how that matches them. So to see if what you actually want to do is what's happening right now.
I think the business goals is probably the biggest thing there. You should see these as different routes that lead to your content. And ultimately, it doesn't really matter how people find your content. If they get a recommendation from a friend, and they get a link by SMS, and they click on that and they go to your website, or if they go to search and click on your app directly, essentially they're going to your business, to your content, and they want to go there. So it's not really something where I'd worry about, oh, you're cannibalizing your traffic by sending people to my app instead of the website. Essentially, both of those should lead to your business and should make people happy with the content that they find there. How can I see if app indexing is implemented correctly on my app?
So we try to show you errors in the Search Console as we are scanning and indexing and rendering your pages. And if we see some problem, then we'll send this to you. So you can go and check that regularly. I believe we also send a bunch of messages when we notice that the errors go above a certain threshold. So keep an eye on that. Another tool that is really useful is Fetch as Google for Apps. So you can go and fetch individual URLs here. And then finally, you kind of know already what is the structure of your app and how much of it you have tried to index. So I would also suggest just looking regularly at Search Analytics and see how much traffic you're getting and which pages are ranking. So if that matches your expectations, then you're doing well. And then if you think that very little of your app is being indexed or something like this, then come and talk to us.
But also, I mean, the easiest way is just to look at the Google search results, and if you get the deep links in Google search results, then you see that your implementation is doing fine, right?
Will you provide an open source version of Googlebot? so that we can run the crawler locally on our dev machines and test it if everything is kind of set up properly. I don't know. For app indexing, it's probably really tricky. At least for web search, I don't think that would really be possible.
I don't think so.
Another thing that I mentioned a little bit earlier, but it's worth reiterating, is that you can now use the app indexing API, so you don't need to open up your content to being crawled. That's optional. So if you just use the API to send us the title and the description of your app page, we'll use that to match it to your web content. So have a look at the documentation on the dev site. We'll post it later, and that has a lot of descriptions on how to do this. So this makes it a lot easier for you. So you don't need to have this whole crawling process where we fetch everything and we try to render it. Like you can let us do most of the work and just send us the description and the title of the page.
Can you share the presentation? That would be really nice. So in general, we can't share the presentations. It'll be on the YouTube video, so you can definitely watch it there again. But we tend not to share the presentations themselves. Sorry.
So this presentation just basically has a bunch of screenshots from Search Console, and if you already have an app, you can go and see much more detailed information than what was in the presentation if you just browse around.
That's true. So how do app results rank compared to website results in the mobile search results for competitive keywords?
Well, I think we are very happy to answer all of your questions related to app indexing itself and technical bits around app indexing. I think we are not allowed to answer questions related to ranking itself. So sorry.
I actually I asked that, but if you look in the chat rather than Q&A, Luke tried to post that. It cut off halfway, and so I pasted it, and it cut off again.
I see.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Thanks. So, I mean, one thing to keep in mind here is that for websites, there's a lot more signals, right? Like, we know a lot more about websites than we know about apps. So it's very difficult to compare those things. And in general, we also don't really advise people to try to break it down into, like, which are the 200 signals, and this is playing here because it's a full moon, but it's a Friday, so the Saturday one is stronger and whatever. So,
You're not supposed to give out the internal information.
Sorry. So for apps, what we try to do right now is to make sure that it's a quality website connected to a quality web page. So that's why there's this whole content mismatch thing that we feel very strongly about, that we want to make sure that the content of the web page matches the content of the app page, and then together we're like, okay, this pair, has this and this signal that we can use to rank them. So let's talk more about ranking again when we start ranking app-only content.
So you actually need a website.
Well,
you can't have an app without.
For now.
No, yeah. But we are working on a solution for app only, and it will be announced soon.
Okay.
Okay, to establish a relationship between deep links and web pages, we have link elements in the body section rather than, we talked about this briefly.
Yeah.
What if users are not comfortable in sharing their card details in app compared to a website? Am I losing potential customers who are not very convinced with the app e-commerce idea?
Well, I think, like we mentioned before, you're totally in control of which traffic you want to guide to your application versus to your mobile website. So it's a decision that you take, and you have to analyze your customers and have a look where the monetization of your app is doing better. So if in your case monetization is doing better on the mobile website, then you can either do app indexing partially for your website, only for the part that you think will be beneficial for you, or you can just decide not to do it. So this is hard to answer for us because different partners have different use cases, and we've heard different use cases where some of the partners were saying that the user engagement is way better in the apps, and users stay 7 times more time inside of the apps, and they get more money out of advertisement in the apps, whereas there were other partners that were actually in the contrary. So it's up to you.
Yeah. I mean, we've also seen some businesses that say, oh, we're moving all of our business to the app, and saying we have a big e-commerce site, we don't even need to run a website anymore because people are buying most of their content directly in their app. So if you're really seeing that people are afraid of using your app to buy something, then maybe it's worth also taking a step back and looking at your app in the bigger picture and seeing why don't people trust my app, or what can I do to make it so that people trust my content more. I saw this really weird thing when I'm searching on Google after I create a deep link to my app. Some of the devices have suggestions to open my application. Some of them don't for the same query. Where could that be coming from? Maybe that's, I don't know. I've seen that with just like timing differences.
Also, maybe what is important to mention is that actually you have to, first of all, you have to download your application from Google Play. So if you installed your application as a developer with one of the ADB comments, then most likely this won't work. And then second of all, you have to be logged in your browser. And third of all, you have to enable your web history. Those are the three elements that most of the time we see. I mean, that one of this element is missing, and that is why you don't see the results on one of the devices. Other thing is that maybe you have different language on one of the devices, and then obviously language impacts the results of the search that you make, or the results, the search results. So, and then maybe that is why sometimes you see it, you don't see it. But then it has to be actually analyzed. The best way to do it is just to go to the Fetch as Google tool, and then you will see how Google is seeing your particular deep link.
And again here, like if you could provide us some queries and some examples, then we could have a look and give you more detailed information, because what Christoph is saying is all correct, but it might not apply to your specific case, and we should be able to debug your stuff with specific examples. And I guess as a general guideline for anyone who wants help on their own stuff is give us your app so that we can actually debug.
Well, the app URI.
Yes.
And we have a separate section in the Webmaster Help Forum, so if you do run across weird issues around app indexing, you can always post there. You can also use short URLs for your website if you prefer not to have that shown directly. I don't think there's like a short URL for app URLs yet. But that's definitely a good place to go. We're actively monitoring what's posted there to make sure that things are kind of working as they should be working. Yeah, I think time-wise we're pretty much at the end. I see there's one more question in the chat. Is it wrong if I include www in the host path of the app deep link?
Depends on your structure of your URIs.
So it's not wrong.
It's not wrong. Okay. Yeah, if that's how you structure your URIs, then that sounds like the way it should be. Okay.
Hey, John.
Yeah. Hi.
Hey, wanted to check, do we get any benchmarking data for app specific in web search, like, or in the mobile search? Like how we have in Google Analytics the benchmarking, where we can have like a meaningful, goals like, okay, this is the overall category and this is what we can achieve at the most, right? Similarly, can we get something for the app as well in mobile search?
You should be able to see some stats on traffic and user acquisition in the Google Play Store. I'm not sure exactly what analytics provides for apps specifically. But if you combine what you see in the Play Store, which is how many people came in from search and eventually ended up installing your app, with what you see in Search Console, which is where your app was showing for specific queries, then you kind of get two sides of that picture.
I think you're talking about the Play Store, but what I'm saying is from mobile search, mobile web search. Let's say if competitor A is getting a lot of impressions compared to competitor B, and what is actually the overall impressions for a given a query, and how these apps are actually getting visibility or impressions or clicks.
Oh, so you mean like not for your app, but for the bigger picture, like yes. How many impressions in general does Google get for these queries? I don't.
Yeah, not for the text links, but for the apps.
For apps specifically, don't think we share that information.
So we've shared a few numbers, but we do that very occasionally. So I think the latest thing that we mentioned recently was that we have around 50 billion app links indexed, and there's an app link that shows for about 25% of the queries. So these are numbers that we've shared recently, but there's no kind of dashboard or something like this where you can go and have a look at those.
Maybe a good feature for like in Webmasters where we can actually find out this data.
That sounds interesting, yeah. All right, so we've come to the end time-wise. We managed to get through all of the questions. Perfect timing with the number of questions you all submitted. Thank you, Maria and Christoph, for coming and presenting all of this. It's really fantastic, very interesting. As I mentioned before, we have another Hangout later today, another one on Thursday in German, then an English one on Friday again, and probably some that I'm missing. So if you have general web search questions, you're welcome to go ahead on them. If you have something specific about app indexing, you're welcome to try that as well. But obviously, I'm not as expert on it as these two are, so I might have to defer to them or defer to the forum where we can pick it up there.
So please add me on Google+. You can see me in the participants in the event for this Hangout, and send me the examples that we were talking about in the Q&A. I think I managed to add 3 or 4 of you already while we were discussing, but for the rest, if you can just find me, add me, and send me a message.
Great, thank you.
All right, thanks a lot. Thanks. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.